Aloha no kako. My name is Keone Kealoha Alvarez. I'm the great-great-grandson of Joseph Lono Kahikolo and Kealoha Lapaku Kau'i. It's been 10 long years since I returned to this place. It is a secret that I held for so long. Culturally, this place is Kapu, sacred. I'm just creating this trail. We're kind of heading more towards that direction.
I have 5 sons, and Keone is the youngest of the 5. He was a very good child. He loves animals of all kinds. He always found things to do. Out of all my children, he was the most creative.
When I was 8 years old, my brothers discovered a cave in the forest near our home. They discovered human skeletal remains. Archaeologists positively identified the remains as ancient Hawaiians.
As kids, at first, we were scared of the burial site. Keone took it a notch further, and he realized that when we were older, that it's not something to be scared about. It's something to take care of and watch over it.
With development booming on the Big Island, the Puna district is primed for progress. But some native Hawaiians say it's running roughshod over ancestral remains.
If we knew that it wasn't flagged, it would have given us enough time to preserve this site.
The story of a young man trying to protect an ancient burial site next to his Big Island home.
He's guarding something more valuable than treasure, more precious than gold.
And construction everywhere. Hawaiians fear every time a lot is cleared, another burial cave is destroyed.
I decided to do some research on my own, hoping to find a solution to protect the cave. Online, there are many articles and cases of Hawaiian burials being desecrated in Hawaii. Seeing some of the outcomes of what could happen was really disturbing. I wanted to learn more about Hawaiian burial sites, so I went to the library to do some research.
Let me show you a couple of books in this section here. David Malo and Samuel Kamakaua were 2 well-known Hawaiian scholars. This is David Malo's book,
Wow.
Hawaiian Antiquities.
Okay.
It's pretty good. He writes about a lot of different Hawaiian traditions, including burial.
Burials were sacred. Burials were important. When a person dies, their corpse remains, but their spirit takes another journey.
Hawaiian burial traditions are never the same. The ceremony depends on the family practices, status, local surroundings, and even the circumstances of how a person died. The women would help in the burial process. They would gather natural herbs and prepare needed supplies that the men would need to bury the body. Women would make kapa, a material made of mamaki, also known as the mulberry tree. The bark of the tree was skillfully pounded into a strong fiber cloth and oftentimes used to wrap the deceased body or bones before burial. Only a few chosen kane or men prepared the body for the nighttime burial. During the burial preparation, men and women worked separately in different houses.
Because Hawaiians were very thorough. They knew every bone in your body and every muscle and how it linked. They didn't know that by just putting it on the side. They went through it.
Hawaiians used several different burial methods. If the ground was dirt, a pit was dug. But if the ground was solid rock, stones were stacked over the body. Some burials were in lava tubes and in caves or in sand dunes near the ocean. For over 2,000 years, there was a common way Hawaiians have practiced to bury our people. The method they used was to arrange them in a fetal position for its burial. Hawaiians prepared the body by tying a rope to the knee joints and pulling it around the neck until the knees touched the chest. The rounded body was tightly wrapped in kapa cloth and a round hole was dug to kanu the body, or plant it. Like a tree, the body was planted in the earth to be reborn to the spirit world of Kane. It was not a custom for Hawaiians to mark their burial site locations. Though uncommon, sometimes an ahu or an altar of stone or wood was made near the burial site. Only the family would use this platform to place offerings on it.
This is how we as Hawaiians do our offering. And it's not for anybody to open my offering and to see what's in it. You know, this is something personal to me. And this is my gift to my kupuna, to my ancestors who's buried in this cave. Nobody else.
In the forest, we have many different types of plants. As indigenous people of the forest, it's a refuge, knowing that every living thing within it can be utilized.
This plant right here is very special to our Hawaiian people. It is called the key plant. Every part of this plant was used in the Hawaiian culture. There's another way that Hawaiians use the key plant. And what they'll do with the root is they'll chop it up and they'll smash it. And out of the root, fluid would come out, and they would actually use that as an embalming fluid when a person died. So whenever you see this plant, you're gonna see most likely it's planted around families' homes, or you're gonna see it in cultural sites, and especially burial sites, because part of its properties was to ward off evil. And that's the reason why a lot of people use this plant around their homes or in special areas that they want to protect.
This forest that surrounds the cave is sacred. When I come here, it reminds me of a Hawaiian elder who shared with me an untold story of a burial method his family used in the forest.
What my mama said, that this couple loved her so dearly. And it was a young girl. She took ill and she died, and they loved her so much. What they did is prepare all these herbs and put it all different areas where they could drain all the liquid out here. And they kept her.
And reminisced about my
when a
great-grandmother's
person lived in the
love
mountains
for our
passed
family.
away,
It
their
was a
organs
beautiful
was
thing.
also removed, and their body was filled with pulu, or the hairy part of the hapu ferns. This was another way Hawaiians buried their people.
Some bodies were treated in a fashion called i'aloa, the long fish, where they would do an incision and remove as much of the body organs as can, and they would pack the cavity with pa'akai, with Hawaiian salt.
Important part of the body, they wrap it up with salt and bandage it up, and the mouth, they put salt in the mouth and they close the mouth. Everything is prepared. That's why when they find the bodies, the body don't decay fast. It takes time because the salt is what preserves the body. I told my auntie, boy. So that was my lesson. To me, it was a lesson.
Caves were sacred and had the right conditions. Rainwater seeping through the lava made caves a pure and peaceful resting place.
Burial caves are usually, the opening of the burial caves were usually very small and hard to get in. So once you get that burial in, their loved ones who has passed on will be safe in that particular place.
Also, caves were a perfect hiding place to bury bones. For Hawaiians, it was not in their nature to be venturing the depths of a cave, especially if they knew it was a burial cave. Hawaiians believe it to be a pathway to Milu, the underworld of spirits. The consequences of looking into burial caves or desecrating a burial was horrific. It was known that Hawaiians would restrain criminals and club them to death. If the war implement was not around, then they would find the biggest rock and bash your face in for what you saw. Hawaiians often took it a step further into the afterlife, placing the mutilated body on an altar, letting it decay and rot as an offering to appease the gods.
And Hawaiian laws were so clear and so easy to understand. You knew if you were or were not a kapu breaker. And you also know that the penalty for kapu breaking was death.
Great lengths were taken to conceal the burial site so that nobody would know, so that you wouldn't even be tempted to reveal the location of the burial. You yourself committed suicide. Every person, whether you were a great ali'i or a kaua, a servant, a slave, you had sacred or rituals in which your bones or your body was prepared.
As Hawaiians, we believe that our mana, our spiritual power that each and every one of us have, is housed or contained within the iwi, within the bones. And so iwi is very, very sacred.
In ancient times, they would place the body in an imu or in an underground oven so that the flesh would be easy to take off.
The pela of the body was burned in a pit of fire and turned into lehu or ashes. In a special place, the kahuna would then pour the ashes into the ocean. The night was like a cloak. It was a protection for the burials and the people who were burying them.
And the bones possessed the greatest of the mana. With great care, they would take this and wrap it in a pu'olo, a kapa, or an ie, a basket.
And for very important chiefs, the ka'ai was woven from the ia roots. They would decorate it to look or represent the human being, including ears and mouths.
Other Hawaiians believe that they should be put into sand dunes. Advantage of putting them into sand dunes is that eventually they will rot down so that the bones become part of that sand. So the ocean and the things of land become one and the same within this sand dune. Unlike the ground where you can dig it up and you still have a sense of something being dug there. Sand dunes, you couldn't do that. They can cover up the sand dune very well. People would never know that you buried there last night.
They took great lengths to make sure that the deceased didn't go barren. And barren meant without anything. If a warrior died at battle, then upon his death, his war gear would go with him. His finest malo would be buried with him, or he would be buried in his finest malo, his cape, his weapons, his gods. And so these items were of great mana to the person, not to anybody else.
In old times, when a person died, it was an emotional thing. Sometimes women would beat their chests and scratch their faces. Men would gouge out their eyes, take out their niho, their teeth, and disfigure their body. This was an expression to show their deep pain and feelings of their loss to onlookers. If someone was greatly missed by the deceased loved one, a bone would be taken and sewn into a pillow so a loved one could be near them. Oftentimes, instead of bones, the palm of the hand would be cut off, dried in the sun, and taken to be saved. and if not the hand, the fingernails, teeth, or even hair of a person. Hawaiians had a strong belief that the funerary objects had mana, or power, which was placed with a burial called moipu. Moi means to lie, and pu is to lie with. Moipu.
And today we don't know. We don't know how the person who died took care of these objects. We don't know the chance of the prayers that he or she utilized in the care for of these objects. So who are we to possess them now? Who are we to say, this is from my kupuna. I deserve to have this. I don't. I don't deserve to have it because it wasn't mine. It wasn't given to me. I was not taught how to malama. I wasn't given that kuleana. Nobody.
In the Hawaiian culture, kahuna were central to Hawaiian life. Without them, nothing moved forward. Kahunas were masters in many trades, but commonly known as priests for healing and foretelling the future. The kahuna a-na-na were feared by the Hawaiian people. Sometimes their method was to obtain personal items, to cast spells out on their victims, to cause harm and death to their enemies.
I do know of very beautiful funerary items that were made distinctly to harass that spirit throughout his lifetime, and it was buried with him so he never forgets it. So it's not necessarily the best of intent. And so for those who wander around thinking that, oh look, I found this old item, I would be very, very, very careful. Because when somebody goes, especially if it was a negative thing, if somebody goes through all that trouble to make something that heavy to put into that grave, you're not going to be the one who wants to carry that burden.
Hiuvai was an ancient tradition. Hawaiians believed would cleanse themselves off after the body was buried. At dawn, the limukala, olena, and the key leaf were used to perform the purification ceremony. The kahuna would pray for those who helped in the burial, and they could return in good health to the village and their families. All who had taken part would bathe themselves in the ocean to conclude the ritual. Looking back on this journey, I feel good about myself to be able to be the guardian of our burial cave ever since I was 8 years old. Today is a special day to be able to move forward in my life now that the burial cave is safe under my protection. This kahea, or calling, is special. It is a gift that I'll continue to pass on to my ohana and the next generation. I have committed myself, like our people have done for over 2,000 years, protecting our Hawaiian burials, ensuring that our ancestors will remain hidden, sacred, and kapu in Hawaii.